Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare. Gopi Jana Vallabha Giribharadhare. Gopi Jana Vallabha Giribharadhare. Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Yamunatira Vanachare. Yamunatira Vanachare. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare. Gopi Jana Vallabha Giribharadhare. Gopi Jana Vallabha Giribharadhare. Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Yamunatira Vanachare. Yamunatira Vanachare. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare. Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada. Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jai Vishtvad, Paramahansa, Paramaprajacharyas, Tadasasi Samad, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada ki, ISKCON's founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Shri Shri Radha Radhanath ki, Shri Giri Govardhan ki, Shri Caitanya Mahaprabhu ki, Sankirtan Yagya ki, Ekadasi Vrata ki, Gopremanande. All glories to their Samal devotees. All glories to their Samal devotees. All glories to their Samal devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Sure. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So devotees, today we are reading from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrta, chapter titled In Every Town and Village. And we are starting from up there? But, okay, sorry. Got it. Yes, right, so here we go. Prabhupada's preaching in Nairobi had been especially active. He had established Krishna consciousness in a new city, setting the example for Brahmananda Swami to emulate, showing the standard for spreading Krishna consciousness throughout the continent. And Shamsunda was keeping his GBC godbrothers informed of Prabhupada's amazing activities. And this is a quote from a letter of Shamsunda Prabhu's. The pace has been lightning fast, and His Divine Grace is opening up yet another vast theater of operations. The people are thronging with curiosity and serious questions. Prabhupada, after finishing one late-night preaching marathon, asked for food and remarked, "You see, I'm hungry. Keep me talking. That is my life. Don't let me stop talking." But Nairobi was only one city in one country on one continent. And Prabhupada's desire was to see Krishna consciousness in every city, town, and village in the world. How could he do it in one lifetime? Traveling to every city in the world, printing and distributing books in every language, constructing fabulous temples. He couldn't. But he wanted to do as much as possible in whatever time Krishna allotted to him, to ensure that the Krishna consciousness movement would survive. He criticized the politicians' typical attitude that unless they themselves remained active, everything they had worked for would crumble. Such politicians were always reluctant to retire, preferring to remain in office until their last breath. Prabhupada, however, had no personal ambition, and he knew that results were awarded by Krishna. As a true sannyasi, he had renounced the world and worldly ambition, but he had not become lazy. He was executing his mission at an advanced age, and Lord Krishna was rewarding his attempts. Prabhupada, therefore, in a mood of reciprocating with Krishna, kept working to expand the Krishna consciousness movement. Knowing that Lord Krishna wanted the world flooded with love of God, Srila Prabhupada had earnestly tried to do it, beginning in a storefront in New York City. And Krishna had responded, sending him a few men and enough money to pay the rent. Then Srila Prabhupada had attempted to do more, and again Krishna had responded. Thus, a second ISKCON center, and a third, and a fourth, and more had sprung up, and book printing had begun. Srila Prabhupada, in his mood of loving reciprocation with Krishna, just kept attempting more and more. Now it was no longer simply one person's work. Srila Prabhupada was entrusting the work to his disciples. And those disciples, if they were actually to help, would have to adopt Prabhupada's selfless dedication. As they tried to follow him in his expansive plans, however, their minds faltered. For a handful of devotees to maintain even one temple in one city was a big job. Yet Prabhupada was doing this 100 times over. He wanted the movement he had started to continue for thousands of years, and he was confident that as long as his followers remained pure, working within the guidelines he had given, they would be successful. Sometimes it's said that there are three levels of devotees, as we know. There's the Kanishta Adhikaris, or sort of like the beginners, then Madhyam Adhikaris, who are in the middle somewhere, and basically qualified devotees, and then Uttama Adhikaris, who are very advanced devotees. So Prabhupada, one thing was that he said, or at least inferred, that a Kanishta Adhikari, if he or she is qualified enough, even though they're Kanishta Adhikaris, they can keep themselves Krishna conscious without just sort of spontaneously drifting away. They could maintain themselves in Krishna consciousness. Then the Madhyam Adhikaris, the middle level devotees who are preachers and who are able to communicate Krishna consciousness. Then one thing Prabhupada said was, they could keep not just themselves, but they could keep a whole temple Krishna conscious with a group of devotees, a collection of devotees. So they could do that and spread some Krishna consciousness here and there around. But then Prabhupada said that an Uttama Adhikari, most advanced devotee, can make the whole world Krishna conscious. And this is what Srila Prabhupada did, that he traveled around the whole world. He circled the globe 12 times in about as many years, and he visited so many countries, so many places. And wherever he went, then people became Krishna conscious. And gradually more and more became Krishna conscious. So Srila Prabhupada was able to do that even in Russia, which at the time was communist, and extremely heavy, actually extremely heavy. There's one little experience we had, or we were told of by His Holiness Indradyumna Maharaj. Indradyumna Maharaj was coming to a festival of ours, because I used to be involved there in Russia and even in, of all places, Siberia. So he was coming out to participate in a festival of ours out in Siberia. And they were flying out overnight to land kind of early in the morning, like that. But there was fog in the particular airport where he was meant to land. And so the plane had to go and land and wait for a while in another city some distance away, like, I don't know, half an hour or so flight away from what was his destination. So they landed there, and they all had to get off the plane and go into the terminal and just sort of wait around for a while until the people got a report that the fog had lifted. So he was in there. And of course Maharaj didn't speak Russian, but there was one elderly man from the communist era who was sweeping the terminal where the devotee or the people from the flight, including Maharaj, were gathered, and they were waiting. So he saw this elderly gentleman with his broom, saw Indradyumna Maharaj and walked up to him and said in Russian, like in Russian, "What are you? Who are you?" And then the man asked, "Are you a Buddhist?" Because that particular area in Siberia is actually majority Buddhist population. They're kind of like Mongolian-looking type of people, if you know what I mean. And yeah, Buddhism is the main religion there. So this gentleman asked Maharaj, "So who are you? What are you? Are you a Buddhist?" And Maharaj, through a translator, said, No, I'm Hare Krishna." And the man said, "Oh, Hare Krishna." And Maharaj asked him, "You heard of Hare Krishna?" And the man kind of sort of took a step back and looked at him like, "What?" And he said, "Yeah, of course I've heard of Hare Krishna. You think I'm stupid?" So Prabhupada, his influence had reached out into like kind of quite far eastern Russia, which is just and remains like another world. But that's the influence of someone like Srila Prabhupada. Right, so anyway, let us continue. As they tried to follow him in his expansive plans, however, their minds faltered. And I remember actually an experience I had right out there in Siberia, catching a flight on my own. And these two policemen were there checking the people as they go through into the waiting area, and they checked me and they looked at me like, "Who are you?" And then one of them spoke to me in Russian and asked me, "Oh, where are you going?" And I answered, to his surprise, in Russian, that I'm going to a certain city. And he stepped back and turned to his friend and said, in Russian, he speaks Russian. Had a number of experiences like that. So yeah, Prabhupada, what Prabhupada did. Yes. So although the present age of Kali was the worst of all ages, in which people had little or no interest in spiritual life, Prabhupada had faith in the past Acharya's predictions that Krishna consciousness was destined to enter a golden age of worldwide influence. True, it was the worst of times, yet by the influence of the holy name of Krishna, it would become the best of times. The chanting of the holy name was the religion of the age. The people of Kali Yuga would find deliverance simply in chanting Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada's activities show he was empowered by Krishna. This is evident from his childhood, when at the age of 5 he held a Ratha Yatra festival, and it's certainly evident from these years, 1968 to 1971, that's the period, 68 to 71, that is being covered now in the lilamrta. So yeah, 68 to 71, when he actively expanded his Krishna consciousness movement. Prabhupada compared ISKCON to the Varaha incarnation of Krishna, who at first had been no bigger than a thumb, but had quickly expanded to half the size of the universe. And just, interesting little point, that the Indian prime ministers go to Russia, and there's been a connection between Russia and India for a long time, actually. And even today, there's a strong connection. So one of the prime ministers, I forget which one, was going to a state dinner organized by, would you believe, Mr. Putin himself. Yeah. And right now I'm preparing the Bhaktivedanta course, for teaching Bhaktivedanta course, and today or tomorrow I'm going to be going on to the chapter where Krishna kills Putana. And a sort of funny thing is that according to Russian grammar, that when the word, Putin is in the what we call the genitive case, means of Putin. So the Russian word is, you don't say of, it's just one word with an ending, means of Putin. And the word is Putana, a masculine noun with a consonant at the end. You just add a, then it becomes of that. So of Putin becomes Putana. Anyway, he deserves it. But anyway, yeah. Don't tell him I said that. Yeah, so where were we? Yes, right. So ISKCON's rapid growth, well, anyway, about Mr. Putin or Putana, very appropriate. There was this dinner for the Indian Prime Minister, and the Indian Prime Minister, of course, he knows ISKCON, they all know ISKCON there. So he invited some of the devotees to come to that dinner, so some of them came. And Putin was there, and they were serving drinks. And they were serving vodka, or what in Russia is called vodka. So They came to serve Mr. Putin. And in Russia, a Hare Krishna devotee is called a Krishnite. We're all Krishnites in Russia. So they came to offer Mr. Putin some vodka, and he refused and said, no, give me some fruit juice. And he said, in Russian, he said, I am Krishnite. Hare Krishna. Anyway, he's a politician, being diplomatic. Shishi Radha Radhanath Sri Giri Govardhan Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. Because he's not really. Anyway, he tolerates the Hare Krishna movement so far. As long as they're just Russians. So, where was I? Interest. Prabhupada had faith in the past Acharya's predictions that Krishna consciousness was destined to enter a golden age of worldwide influence. No, wait a sec. Srila Prabhupada's activities? No, where am I? ISKCON's rapid growth was not simply due to rapid communications and modern travel, nor to its founder Acharya's material organizational abilities. This is one thing that some of Prabhupada's godbrothers tried to attribute his success to. I mean, his considerably greater success than what they had. They said, yeah, well, he was a businessman before. So he was a good organizer, good manager. Which is just, not very nice. They wouldn't admit that he's the greatest preacher and particularly the most advanced devotee. Right, yes. Prabhupada, judged materially, was not a likely person to conduct a worldwide movement, to travel vigorously, to write volumes of books, and to train thousands of disciples on every continent. He was satisfied with a simple, regulated life, and he disdained all such cultural items as music, fashion, sports, politics, art, food, anything not related to Krishna. Just an interesting little point in that regard. As it says that he disdained all such cultural items as music and so on. But with George Harrison, who, they had quite a connection, Prabhupada and George Harrison, quite a connection actually. And at one point, I was not present in the room, but a devotee or a couple of devotees who were present came and told us immediately afterward that George had said to Srila Prabhupada, that I'm just getting into this more and more, and I'm thinking maybe I should come and live in a temple and just get fully engaged. And Prabhupada told him, no, don't do that. You carry on with your music. And because you're helping so many young people to become Krishna conscious, which is, very much true. Because through his music, my gosh. And that song, it's from a different era from many of us here. From my youth, my sweet Lord. Burijan Prabhu told me, I don't know if he told you, he told me that Prabhupada said, that song, My Sweet Lord, he said, this is a song in separation from Krishna, in the mood of Srila Sanatana Goswami. You heard that? Yeah, Burijan Prabhu told me that. The Prabhupada, he was present when Prabhupada said that. Yeah, so like that, Prabhupada was prepared to use even that sort of music, which is, normally sort of connected to really like decadence and degradation, actually. In fact, Prabhupada said about some devotees showed him some pictures of some of the more extreme rock musicians of that time. Some of them were like bizarre, actually. And Prabhupada said, yes, some of these people have come from the hellish planets to degrade the youth. Yes, right, okay. He worked and traveled out of an intense desire to benefit the world with real culture, to implant spiritual culture in what to him was the desert of a materialistic society. Therefore, accepting that Prabhupada was not materialistically ambitious, we can understand his proclivity for worldwide propaganda and dissemination of a spiritual movement as entirely transcendental. He was acting solely to carry out the desires of Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Srila Prabhupada saw himself as a servant of his spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, whose message he was carrying. That message, which was also the message of Lord Krishna, had come down through disciplic succession. We're all spiritual souls, eternal servants of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. We've now fallen into forgetfulness and are suffering birth after birth in this material world. By chanting Hare Krishna, we can revive our lost relationship with God. With Prabhupada's first success in America, a few of his godbrothers in India had minimized his work. Bhaktivedanta Swami, they had said, they had said, happened to have a temperament suited to mixing with lower class Western youth. Hare Krishna. This is kind of typical. I mean, it really is typical. The fact, however, as Prabhupada's own experience testified, was that the young people among whom he preached were not particularly receptive, nor had he arrived timely and welcomed simply to discourse on Srimad Bhagavatam to throngs of submissive disciples. He had been successful because of his great patience, tolerance, and compassion. It was not, therefore, the advent of the jet plane, although Prabhupada gladly took advantage of it, nor was it happenstance, nor luck, nor even a social or historical phenomenon that enabled Srila Prabhupada to spread Vedic culture from east to west and back again. No, it was the will of Krishna and the sincerity of his servant. Caitanya Charitamrita states that unless one is possessed of Krishna Shakti, special power from God, one cannot propagate the chanting of the holy name. Kali Kalira Dharma Krishna Nam Sankirtan, Krishna Shakti Vina Nahe Tara Pravatan. The fundamental religious system in the age of Kali is the chanting of the holy name of Krishna. Unless empowered by Krishna, one cannot propagate the Sankirtan movement. That's Caitanya Charitamrita Anchalila, chapter 7, verse 11. Yeah, and that is, if I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure it's a fact, It's spoken by Vallabhabhata, who himself is very sort of extraordinary and interesting character, you could say. So this verse describing Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also describes Lord Chaitanya's servant, Srila Prabhupada. Had Srila Prabhupada not been empowered by Krishna, he could not have inspired so many people to accept the chanting of Hare Krishna. According to Vedic literature, when a person has extraordinary spiritual endowment, Krishna Shakti, he is known as a Shaktivesh avatar. Although the word avatar generally refers to incarnations of God himself, the term Shaktivesh avatar refers to an individual empowered by God to enact the mission of God in this world. Shaktivesh avatars and their particular functions are mentioned in the Vedic literature. For example, the Emperor Prithu possessed the Shakti for God-conscious administration. The four Kumars possessed the Shakti of transcendental knowledge, and Narada Muni possessed the Shakti of devotional service. Lord Buddha, whose name and activities are described in Srimad Bhagavatam, is also a Shaktivesh avatar, and even other divinely empowered personalities outside the Vedic culture, such as Jesus Christ and Muhammad, are accepted by Vaishnava acharyas as Shaktivesh avatars. Srila Prabhupada's activities during the years 1968 through 1971 establish him as a Shaktivesh avatar, and he fulfills the predictions of the scriptures. Prithivitiyachiyata nagaradigram sarvatra prachara haibe moranam. It's a verse actually from Caitanya Bhagavat, which means in all the villages and towns all over the world, everywhere, the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya will be preached. And it's interesting the context in which this verse is spoken by Lord Chaitanya. I mean, it's a bit of a long story really, but Lord Chaitanya was on his way, or wanted to go, or maybe he was already on his way, from Puri to Navadvip. And to get there, of course, he had to pass through Orissa. And Orissa was, it was very sort of splintered, but definitely some areas of it were controlled by Muslims. And Muslims, as today, generally, really, in those days, were just not inclined towards Krishna consciousness or what they took to be Hinduism. So anyway, he had to go through an area controlled by one such Muslim, but that Muslim had a minister of Hindu affairs who was a devotee and follower of Lord Chaitanya. And that devotee knew Lord Chaitanya is coming and he'll be passing through just like any time. And the Muslim ruler had heard of Lord Chaitanya. And he asked his minister of Hindu affairs, "Who is this fellow? Who is he? I've heard people say he's an incarnation of God." And the devotee minister, he wanted to sort of downplay Lord Chaitanya, like, he's not very important. You don't need to, you got better things to be interested in, so don't worry about him. So he he said to the ruler, no, he's just some sort of, person surrounded by a few religious fanatics, don't worry about him. And the ruler said, no, I've heard he's a great person. He's a very great person. And the devotee again said, no, he's not. You've got other things to think about, so don't bother with him. But then the ruler said, no, I want to meet him. And he insisted. So when Lord Caitanya passed through, he was taken to meet him. And when he met Lord Caitanya, well, he came on horseback, and Lord Caitanya came out of where he was staying. And when he came out, the ruler saw him and sort of collapsed in ecstasy off the horse. And devotees were there, and the man was very respectful to Lord Caitanya. And then after a while he left, and the devotees said to Lord Caitanya, that was amazing. This man was really bad, like anti-Hindu. He was really bad, but just look at this. This is the most amazing thing that we've seen. And Lord Caitanya said, you think that's amazing? Well, wait and see. And he spoke this verse, Priti Viti Achiyata Nagaradigram, Sarvatra Prachara Hoibe Moranam. That in due course, my holy names, Moranam, my holy names will be chanted all over, just all over. And when that happens, that will really be amazing. Yes. Even from the viewpoint of religious history, Prabhupada's preaching was a fulfillment of the mission of Lord Caitanya, who had appeared in West Bengal about 500 years before Krishna consciousness came west. The Vedic literature and the Vaishnava acharyas concur that Lord Caitanya is the original Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna himself, appearing in this age as a pure devotee of the Lord. And just as Lord Krishna appeared with his plenary expansion, Lord Balaram, Lord Caitanya appeared with Lord Balaram's incarnation for Kali Yuga, Lord Nityananda. Srila Prabhupada can be appreciated not only generally as the empowered representative of God, but specifically as the manifestation of Lord Nityananda. According to Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy, Lord Krishna manifests himself to the souls of ordinary men through Lord Nityananda. The individual soul requires the help of God to realize God. This help comes by the causeless mercy of Lord Nityananda, who is therefore known as the original Guru. Although Lord Nityananda is the direct expansion of Lord Caitanya, his pastime is to serve Lord Caitanya by redeeming the fallen souls. Lord Nityananda and his representative, the spiritual master, do not alter the scriptures or the teachings of Lord Krishna, but make them more accessible and understandable. Lord Caitanya commissioned Lord Caitanya to preach the holy name at everyone's door. And Lord Nityananda's exemplary mood of vigorous, compassionate preaching was also the mood of Srila Prabhupada. As Srila Prabhupada imparted this mood to his disciples, they in turn went out into the streets of cities around the world to distribute to everyone the mercy of the holy name of God. Lord Nityananda is especially renowned for saving two drunkard brothers, Jagai and Madai, even though they had assaulted him when he had attempted to bless them with the holy name. In Lord Nityananda's time, Prabhupada on several occasions explained there was only one Jagai and Madai, But now the whole world is filled with Jagais and Madhais. And Prabhupada was recruiting his disciples from these Jagais and Madhais. Srila Prabhupada fully displayed Lord Nityananda's compassion in taking all risks and freely giving the holy name. Even Lord Nityananda himself, during his appearance in India, did not approach as many fallen souls as Srila Prabhupada, nor did he approach souls in such degraded conditions of life or in so many rejected parts of the world. But he has done so now through his representative Srila Prabhupada. As the recipient of the combined energy of Gaur-Nitai, Lord Caitanya and Lord Nityananda, Srila Prabhupada blessed the world with love of God. Yeah, one thing, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati makes an interesting, he discusses the subject that Lord Nityananda is described here as being, what did they say? Anyway, like the original guru, something like that. And Radharani is also, Srimati Radharani is also. And there is it's either a lecture or something written by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, which I have a copy of, in which he discusses the relationship between Lord Nityananda and Srimati Radharani as both being the original gurus, two original gurus. And he makes very important and very interesting point there. He says that Lord Nityananda, well, as we've just read here, he delivered Jagai and Madai and many others, and quite a number who are similar to Jagai and Madai also, and many other sort of normal people. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta explains this, and then he makes the point that in terms of Srimati Radharani being the original guru, yes, of course it's true, and she will accept people into her circle, very elevated situation in terms of the highest levels of pure love for Krishna. But Srila Bhaktisiddhanta makes the point that Srimati Radharani will not accept anyone unless they are handed over to her by Lord Nityananda. That's the relationship. So you can only approach Srimati Radharani through Lord Nityananda with sort of his approval or his recommendation, that sort of thing. Yeah. So that's interesting. Right, okay. Srila Prabhupada, however, never described himself as a great empowered personality, either in public or among his disciples. But he stressed that he was in disciplic succession, carrying the authorized knowledge. And he encouraged his disciples to take the same positions. He said, "We want to create many pure devotees so that other people will benefit by their association. In this way, the number of pure devotees increases." Prabhupada knew well that propagating Krishna consciousness was not a professional business. Although in India many professionals spoke or wrote on Srimad Bhagavatam to earn their livelihood, they could not convert materialistic people to devotional service. Only a pure devotee could change the materialistic heart. And it's actually, as I recall, in the original Hare Krishna People movie. I don't know how many of you have seen that from way back. You've seen that? You must have, yeah. From Prabhupada's time. That Prabhupada himself is talking and saying that before I presented my Bhagavad Gita, or Bhagavad Gita as it is, there were a number of versions of Bhagavad Gita already available in English. But then Prabhupada makes the point that, however, not one of them, those different versions and Bhagavad Gitas, not one of them made one devotee of Krishna. And now we're presenting Bhagavad Gita as it is, and millions of people are becoming devotees, at least in the very broad sense of becoming devotees, becoming aware of Krishna consciousness nicely. Right, yes. Prabhupada did not even conclude that he was a pure devotee, only that he was the servant of a pure devotee, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, his Guru Maharaj. I mean, there were a few times Prabhupada referred to himself as like a pure devotee or Mahabhagavat Uttama Adhikari, but not on a regular basis at all. Prabhupada prayed that before he left the world, he could create a living family of pure devotees to spread the parampara teachings of Krishna consciousness and protect them from being changed or obscured. He emphasized that all the preachers of the Krishna consciousness movement could become pure devotees by following the regulative principles, avoiding sinful life, and regularly chanting Hare Krishna. Only in this way, he said, could the devotees have an effect on others. Just a sec, time check. Oh, Krishna. I think we should stop here. Well, let me finish this chapter. It won't take long. 5 minutes maybe. So then, on to October the 18th, 1971, having spent a busy 5 weeks in Africa, Prabhupada was ready to travel on to India. His plan was to visit Bombay, Calcutta, and Delhi. He'd made a strong beginning for ISKCON in India, with land in Mayapur and centers in Bombay, Calcutta, and New Delhi, and he had groups of disciples strategically located in other parts of India. Indians were recognizing ISKCON and appreciating its festivals, kirtans, and prasadam. Life members were offering service and being benefited. They were receiving and reading ISKCON publications, and they were helping support the ISKCON centers. And this was only a start. To get a foothold anywhere, whether in India, Africa, America, or Russia, was certainly a great accomplishment, but a foothold was not enough. Although much had been done to establish the mission of Lord Caitanya, much more remained to be done. Preaching Krishna consciousness was not a job that at some point would be completed. Of course, in one sense, it was already complete and perfect. Prabhupada's preaching had always been successful, even when he had struggled alone in India to make his message heard through Back to Godhead magazine, the League of Devotees, and his translations of Srimad Bhagavatam. He had always remained fixed in the transcendental order of his spiritual master and Krishna. Therefore, he had been successful. The Krishna consciousness movement was already complete, and now, by the will of its author, Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu, this completeness was becoming manifest. But the work, the ecstasy, the samadhi of selflessly and single-pointedly serving that mission was unending and ever unfolding. Now there was a foothold in Africa. Tomorrow he would fly to Bombay, where Krishna had already allowed him a foothold. And as Krishna desired, he would continue to travel and to send his devotees and his books and his message until he reached every town and village in the world. Hare Krishna. Every town and village, ki jai. So that's the end of that volume. Srila Prabhupada, ki jai. Any comments, questions, anything? Additions, subtractions? Mataji?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. It was like an insult to Prabhupada when you read that part where the God brothers were saying that because he had an inclination towards the youth, and that's how he was able to spread Krishna consciousness. We see that even today Srila Prabhupada is preaching through his books, and so what have they got to say about that? It's the purity of Srila Prabhupada that is, that in his books, basically, propounding his philosophy through his books, that's making devotees around the world, even today. So, all glories to Srila Prabhupada.
All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Yeah, Prabhupada didn't appreciate those types of comments. I mean, didn't really often get into it that these, people, they're saying this and that, but occasionally he did. Yeah. And Prahladananda Swami, if you know him or know of him, he was present once when a group of devotees, their first visit to Mayapur back in the, I don't know what it was, 74, 75, something like that. They went across to Navadweep, and they're just sort of looking around, and there's temples there, here and there. And there was one temple of one of Prabhupada's godbrothers, and there was some festival going on. And so they walked in, there's a group, I don't know really how many, but some group of, I guess they were Americans anyway, white, obviously non-Indian devotees, dressed as devotees, and someone was giving a lecture, and the person stopped and looked at them and said, "You see these people, the devotees, they are malechas." So they went back, and someone told Prabhupada of that incident. So Prabhupada called for that whole group. Yeah, Prabhupada called for the whole group and told them, this is what I've heard. And then Prabhupada told them, you are all permanently, spiritually scarred. Yeah. And Prahladananda Maharaj was there, he told me himself. So, yeah, it's not very nice. Some of them, though, funny little point, some of them do a bit of book distribution. Some of them distribute Prabhupada's books. Yeah. Anyway, Hare Krishna. Thank you for the comment. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.